This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com. Alpha Natural Resources, an energy company dedicated to respecting the land. Alpha Natural Resources, we power the world through the energy of our people. Haley Buick GMC, the place for a new Verano or Terrain Denali, in Richmond and online at haleybuickgmc.com. Everywhere there are lighting poles, there's one more opportunity to save money. Intelligent Illuminations provides cost-effective wireless lighting solutions for roadway or area outdoor lights. Kanawha Valley Arena, Virginia's cowboy town, hosting an array of events from Civil War reenactments to diesel truck pulls. More information online at virginiarodeo.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. So what do you do? Information about getting involved in advanced technology careers, making everything from clean energy to life-saving medicine, is available at dreamit.doitvirginia.com. Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.
Welcome to This Week in Richmond, and welcome back to the Dynamic Duo. That's what I have dubbed the two of you. We've enjoyed having you on This Week in Richmond, and we're glad to have you here as 2013 is starting to wrap up. Yep. And we're getting ready for the next session. Delegate Jennifer McClellan, representing portions of Richmond and Henrico County. Yep. Delegate Chris Peace, representing New Kent and parts of Hanover, and King William. Welcome. And as I have looked at the numbers on seniority, by the time you all are all sworn in, I do believe your numbers are you're going to be somewhere in the 30s probably in seniority, from counting down from the top, even though 2006 was your first session. So
time flies.
Yeah, yes. No need for term limits because there's a great deal of change.
That's right.
But what we'd like to talk about is the issues that you see coming up in the upcoming session, either ones that you're going to be carrying or ones that you know your colleagues are and you have strong perspectives on those, either for or against them. Would you like to start, and then Chris, and then let's just go back and forth?
Sure. Well, this is a budget year, and Chris probably knows a little bit more about that, so I'll save that one for him. But I think the three biggest issues that we're going to face are, what to do about Medicaid expansion, what to do about our mental health system that we've seen yet again that it's stressed too far, and then what to do about ethics reform. And I think those will be the three overarching issues that we grapple with this session. I think for me, I've got a lot of things that either constituents or the City of Richmond has asked me to put in, some dealing with local issues, some state agency bills, but I don't have anything overly exciting this year.
Chris?
Well, I'm looking forward to the 2014 session. Obviously, after the elections, it's a totally different landscape here at the Capitol, at least from my perspective on my side of the aisle. But, that's not something that I'm particularly concerned about. Jennifer and I have had a wonderful relationship over the years and finding common ground, and I've been privileged to serve on the transition team, sort of as the minority representative, as the Republican on the transition team, and it's been good to get to know the governor-elect and identify his team and be able to develop policies that keep Virginia moving forward. So it's been a real privilege since the election, and I'm looking forward to hitting the ground running in the new session. We've got a lot of issues to take on, and I think probably the ones that hit closest to home, and they do go through the budget, as Jennifer said, are K-12 spending or funding for our schools. Our young people deserve a wonderful education, Parents expect that, and we will be re-benchmarking the standards of quality and also looking legislatively at ways to reform the SOLs. So I think education reform will be a high priority this year, both in a bipartisan way. I know Jennifer will be working on those issues as a member of the Education Committee. Since the historic transportation bill last year, regardless of which side you fell on that, we need to make sure that reforms continue in transportation, that the monies generated actually go to transportation, and that there is accountability and transparency. And so we'll be working on that, as well as mental health. As Jennifer mentioned, ethics reform will be high on the list as well. I'm carrying a bill with Delegate Comstock, and then in the Senate, Janet Howell and Jill Vogel are the chief co-patrons of legislation that seeks to reform and bring greater efficiencies to the way we manage monies through the state from the feds that go to victims of sexual assault and domestic violence. If you talk about this proverbial war on women, you hear a lot about the real war out there right now is domestic violence and sexual assaults. More murders in Virginia take place as a result of domestic violence than any other issue. So we want to make sure that the local agencies are working hard, being able to provide services and not busy doing paperwork, writing grants to 7 different grant sources within 3 state agencies. We need to streamline that and provide more resources locally so victims are better served. So there are a lot of issues out there, and like every year, there'll be some things that come up that are unexpected.
So before we get to the session, though, you both are involved in the transition. So why don't we tell our viewers a little bit about that, because they read as news comes out about people named, but from your leadership position, and you said as you're one of the minority members on that transition, how's that going?
Sure, and I did neglect to say I am the chair of Governor-elect McAuliffe's transition team, and we're the team is divided into 2 groups. There's one side, policy. We have several policy councils that are divided by issue under the various secretariats who are looking at some of the issues that are going to be coming, and we think over the next 4 years. They will produce sort of policy paper that they will present to the governor-elect and his policy team that will sort of lay the framework for his priorities over the next 4 years. That's probably what most people are excited about. Then there is what I call the HR side, and that is selecting the best and the brightest people to work in the administration, from secretaries in the cabinet to agency heads, and that is a fascinating, important, and time-consuming process. When we came in, the governor likes to joke, but it's not really, it's the truth, that when you come in on the Wednesday morning after the election, you have your press conference, you announce your transition team, the Capitol Police escorts you to an office in Old City Hall. He gets a beautiful office that overlooks the Capitol, and then they say, okay, good luck. And you got a phone and a computer and a whole lot of resumes. So it's been fascinating. I too have enjoyed working with and getting to know the governor-elect in a different context. We've got a lot of very talented people working on the transition team, volunteering almost around the clock. And we have a lot of very talented people in Virginia who want to serve, are looking forward to serving, and we're just trying to make sure that we put together the right team to move Virginia forward over the next 4 years.
And what involvement are you having, Chris, in the transition?
Well, it was a real surprise and sort of honor that Jennifer called a couple weeks after the election and asked me to be a part of it. I attended one of the transportation policy meetings, and you could easily say that you had the experts from around the Commonwealth there at the table, both legislative members as well as private sector representatives from rail, from highway builders, road builders, engineers, transit representatives. The multimodal system of Virginia is complex. Even the port was represented, and we need to make sure and remind ourselves always that whether it's Dulles or the port, our infrastructure helps move commerce and helps our economy be strong. And we don't have the best business rating in the country for nothing. So it's all of those hardworking men and women out there that are making it happen. And hopefully, as policymakers, we're providing the resources and the right reform policies to keep it strong for the future. It's hard to believe how much there's out there that needs attention and maintenance. We last year went into session with the stipulation that there's $500 million in shortfall for maintenance monies on an annual basis, and the crossover effect where you're taking construction monies for maintenance will now end in 2017, and that's a positive step forward. But again, we need to make sure that there's no further erosion going forward from that point, that construction monies remain intact, maintenance monies remain present for keeping up the infrastructure that our wives and children and families and businesses use on a daily basis.
There's another issue that's been brewing somewhat, and I thought with the two of you may have some perspective on it. Just this morning, and this is Monday the 16th that we're having the conversation, listening to the radio in the drive-in early, they were talking about the women who will be the ones on the list honored by the commission that's going to be recognizing women. Knowing that you serve on the Native American or Indian Commission, the controversy really has focused on one of two people from Native Americans.
Right.
And don't know if your commission has been involved in that or how that's going to be resolved, but father of two daughters, it's pretty exciting that there's going to be something here on Capitol Square that'll be recognizing the accomplishment of women over the centuries in Virginia.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot going on in downtown Richmond. Sometimes I'm jealous of Jennifer's perch. She gets to represent the Capitol in the downtown area, and among others. But we've put a lot of money into tourism in the last few years, and we've seen the return on that investment. These projects at the Capitol and potential projects downtown with baseball, with new hotels on 14th and Cary, at the First Freedom Center, with a tribute and museum to the legacy and impact of slavery, but also here at the Capitol with recognizing women, public safety professionals who've given their lives in service to the Commonwealth, and then the Indian tribute here, which I'm particularly excited about. Happy to say we actually just received our first non-solicited six-figure donation towards that. So we're looking to do this with private funds as well. I know the governor this morning will announce his budget proposal, and in part will direct some funds for the Slavery Museum in downtown Richmond. I really think that if we're looking at that, we're thinking about the impact of women throughout the ages here in Virginia, as well as the legacy of Virginia Indians. It's really a nice package. We're long overdue. It's something that's been omitted from our history. I love history, and what a great thing to have Governor McAuliffe, Governor-elect McAuliffe, coming in and having set at his feet a menu of ways to tribute and give honor to those in our past, those who had a difficult history, like African Americans in our country, as well as Indians, and then women and their impact. I think it's a great opportunity heading forward here in 2014.
What's interesting is as long as there have been monuments and memorials, there's been controversy. And if you look back, even here in Richmond, the very first monument on Monument Avenue to the last one, even up in D.C., pretty much every time you do this, everyone has an opinion on who should be on it, what it should say, what it should represent. And for us, I served on the Civil Rights Memorial Commission. And part of that came out of the fact that as then Governor Warner's daughter recognized that there are no women, there are no African Americans around Capitol Square, where are they? And that led to a monument that focuses on Barbara Johns, a 16-year-old girl who led the walkout at Moton and started in Virginia the march towards desegregating schools. And we were very conscious that we wanted to make sure she was represented. But the most controversial, I don't know if controversial is the right word, but one of the most difficult decisions was everyone said, well, we've got to include Oliver Hill. What's interesting, though, is Mr. Hill said, you know what, I always get recognized, but I didn't do it alone. And he felt very strongly that we needed to have Spotswood Robinson recognized as well. And he would often say, you know, Samuel Tucker was right there with me. And we wanted to make sure that some of the unsung heroes who were just as part of the fight, who were just as vital to it, but don't always get the recognition, got the recognition. But again, that was not an easy choice.
And with Indians, Dave, if I can add, I mean,
Yes.
it's a lot harder to identify the figures. You know, so much of the history is lost. You know, we had a really unpleasant, reprehensible period with vital records and the Plecker issues. And, you know, people think about Pocahontas, but Pocahontas doesn't mean the same thing to Virginia Indians as she may to others in Virginia. And so with our tribute, we're looking more towards the themes that concentrate on Indians, you know, spirituality, timelessness, the nature, agriculture, you know, things that are unifying among all descendants of Virginia Indians, and really things that I think other Virginians can learn and benefit from. So it's a slightly different approach than trying to find that one person that represents a whole people. That's a difficult process.
And I guess in the concept of trying to recognize unsung heroes or heroines, as you think about the one recognizing Virginia women, it's interesting to recognize a chief of the Pamunkey tribe, a woman who helped with some kind of a peace treaty. And that's probably somebody new for many of us to learn about that we don't know that much about. And so if that's the way it turns out, that it will be recognizing someone who's has not been recognized.
And I think it's also important to say, you know, a lot of people wonder, you know, why do we bother with these memorials, and why do we bother, you know, raising all this money for them? And these memorials and monuments really bring history alive for a lot of people, and I have seen it with the Civil Rights Memorial. We made it life-size on purpose. We bring school children that come there and say, look, you can make a difference. Barbara Johns was 16. These kids started a movement, you can too. And I've seen it come alive for kids in a way that it never will in a school book. And I think the same will be true for the Women's Monument and the Indian Tribute. And it's a really exciting thing to see.
And the Civil Rights Memorial here, or monument, you know, I guess was either part of or led to the MLK Commission and its work. And Jennifer's done a great job on that commission, and recently had a terrific ceremony here at the Capitol where new plaques were unveiled identifying those individuals who served in the General Assembly and the Constitutional Convention for Virginia.
And as you said, too, public safety. So it's an exciting time for you all as legislators, for the incoming administration and all. I mean, during the next 4 years, there could very well be 3 very prominent, important memorials or recognitions established here on Capitol Square.
Just think of all the jobs that are going to be created.
There you go. There you
construction
go. And as you were saying, you certainly were talking about a 6-figure donation. Our viewers should know this is not their taxpayer money.
That's right, yeah. And they can visit indiantribute.virginia.gov for the website.
Very good.
And I do have to say, we're in the process, speaking of the King Commission, of doing an Emancipation Memorial as well. It won't be on Capitol grounds, it'll be in the city, but there's yet another one coming up.
Very exciting, very exciting. So with the session just around the corner, our viewers are seeing this on the weekend of the 18th and the 20th and the 21st, 22nd, leading right on up to the 25th, and the session convening on January 8th. Sounds like you've got some legislation already lined up that you'll be putting in. Any legislation that you've heard about that you would want to just highlight for viewers that, again, that they may be very excited about or they may have some concern about?
That's an excellent question. There are some bills that have been filed that we just had a pre-filing period where you could request early drafts of bills. So things are circulating. I haven't seen anything pop up that's of major consequence other than our bill, of course, House Bill 1. I know there's an effort to repeal last year's transportation bill, so there's going to be some discussion about that. But with the budget announcement today, with the Merck Commission on Medicaid meeting tomorrow, the 17th, we have an event on House Bill 1 on Wednesday. The governor-elect is announcing his transition designates for secretary positions. There's a lot of news cycle here in the next couple of weeks as people are enjoying the holidays and convening family. We hope they will engage in spirited discussion about Virginia policy and where we need to go and give us good recommendations. We can still file up to 5 bills once session starts, so it's not too late to send in your ideas and give us your thoughts on legislation.
Yeah, and most of our bills are still in the drafting phase, so it's a little premature to outline them in great detail, but a couple of the issues that I'm looking at, one broad one is human trafficking has been a huge issue and growing. There is a movement across the country to have a model human trafficking law, and we are looking at that to see, does it make sense to do that in Virginia, or does it make sense to take pieces of it? So I'm not sure if anything will be introduced this year, but it's definitely an issue that we're looking at. Had an outgrowth. Remember last year I had an anti-bullying bill. I received a lot of calls over the year about looking at bullying and violence in the workplace. It's been 12 years since we've had a study or looked at that at all, so we're considering doing that. And then some of the unintended consequences of actions that sometimes lead to legislation. And here in the city of Richmond, they passed an ordinance to allow chickens in the city, and we got a call from actually one of Chris's constituents that there's a code section dealing with the right to kill dogs that come after livestock, and I don't think that was anticipated in an urban setting when they allowed chickens, so we're looking to see is that going to cause a conflict that you might not want to have in an urban setting. So shows you the wide variety of bills, where they come from. Sometimes it's big picture items, big picture issues, to very small. We didn't think of that when we did this last year. So, and then there's still a lot of stuff, as Chris said, yet to pop up that not on anybody's radar, but could very much end up on the agenda this year.
I serve as the chairman on the Commission on Youth, and one of the issues that we've been looking at over the years, foster care reform, adoption. It's been a great initiative recently to adopt 1,000 children out of foster care, the older children. I think we're getting very close to that 1,000 mark in just a short time, which is exciting. But related to children and youth, early education, early childhood education is so critical to being able to read on grade level, being school ready, but also being career and college ready. The Chamber of Commerce, State Chamber, published a blueprint for Virginia, and part of that is a focus on early childhood education. And we had a debate a few years ago about mandatory pre-K, and that's not what this is about. This is about quality child development programs which help working families stay in the workplace, but also provide good education and good beginnings for our youth. It's the statistics prove not just the reading on grade level and being college and career ready, which is important for our economy and jobs, but it also reduces crime, long-term drug use, all kinds of things relate to that. So there's actually a bill I've been discussing with one of Jennifer's colleagues in her caucus about what might be called a working family tax credit. Those who make that decision at some point where the money you're making is about the same as the money it costs you to send them to daycare, and that's a very bad position for a family to be in, especially where someone wants to work, where as a society we want people to be engaged in the economy and the commerce, and we want children to have that good start. So we need to find ways that we can enable families to continue to be engaged in working as well as good education for kids.
I mentioned at the beginning, referring to you as a dynamic duo, and I mean that in a real genuine sense, and part of it is two different political parties representing very much an urban area and then an area that's more suburban and even farming and rural, but still working together to find common ground. And during the upcoming session, unfortunately, people of the Commonwealth won't hear that much about collaborations and working together. If there are food fights, they'll see those. If there are disputes and anger, they'll hear about that. So thank you for in this season prior to the session of helping our viewers see the civility that does occur here at the Capitol. Delegate McClellan, Delegate Peace, thank you so much for being on This Week in Richmond. We look forward to having you back in 2014 and giving some updates to the viewers about what has happened in the General Assembly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com. Alpha Natural Resources, an energy company dedicated to respecting the land. Alpha Natural Resources, we power the world through the energy of our people. Haley Buick GMC, the place for a new Verano or Terrain Denali, in Richmond and online at haleybuickgmc.com. Everywhere there are lighting poles, there's one more opportunity to save money. Intelligent Illuminations provides cost-effective wireless lighting solutions for roadway or area outdoor lights. Kanawha Valley Arena, Virginia's cowboy town, hosting an array of events from Civil War reenactments to diesel truck pulls. More information online at virginiarodeo.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. So what do you do? Information about getting involved in advanced technology careers, making everything from clean energy to life-saving medicine, is available at dreamitdoitvirginia.com. Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.